Hi, friends. Beautylish is holding their annual fall gift card event. It begins on the 19th, 9 a.m. Pacific time, West Side time, and ends on the 22nd, 11:59 p.m. also PT time. The premise for this event that for every $100 you spend, you receive $20 in Beautylish money, and that will be eligible to use for, I believe, a year. Those are the conditions. Once you've made your purchase, you'll be sent a virtual gift card with whatever amount that was from the amount you spent. Now, I realize I've spoken about shopping discernment, being conservative with what you purchase this time of year. I also realize that many of you deliberately save for these events, that you know the Beautylish full gift card event is coming, and you're like, I have my list ready, but what are your recommendations, Alicia? Beautylish asked if I had any product requests, and I requested a few. One of them, yes, being the Danessa Myricks Lightwork palette. I know many of you were asking for that. And listen, fam, any opportunity on my part I can take to save a little bit of cash and bringing you newer makeup releases, I'm going to take 100%. Therefore, I am grateful for the opportunity to work with Beautylish on this video, and for it not to be 1,000 hours long, I will mainly recommend the products that I requested. Yes, I'll share my thoughts on them, but also will recommend recent releases that will be available to purchase on Beautylish. I won't run through the whole gamut of products because I have plenty of these videos on my channel, and I think you see that there is a through line. You know, like Sonia G will always be on the list for these Beautylish videos, I'm just saying. Speaking of Sonia G, yes, her brushes are dropping. The Fundamental Eye Set, per her blog post, dropping in November. If you decide to participate in the event from the 19th to the 22nd in this month, you could probably get a little few dollars off for the entire set. Just saying. Or a single. I think the brushes will be released as singles. But since we are on the topic of brushes, I requested the Chikuhodo J-G Series. This is a synthetic brush set. Like, Alicia, what in the world are you doing with synthetic brushes? I know how you feel about them. Listen, when it comes to Japanese-made synthetic brushes, there's a difference. They're different. The J-G Series synthetic fibers are designed to be more durable and easier to care for than natural fibers. The technology is, I'm going to say T-A-F-R-E. It spells Tafre. It's partially made of corn, and it has antibacterial properties due to the incorporated silver, and the hairs mimic blue squirrel. That's what got me. What synthetic fiber is bold enough to mimic gray squirrel? And if anyone is to do it, it's Chikuhodo. I decided to go with this set because the JS set uses PBT, and I've experienced PBT from Chikuhodo before, so we wanted to see how the Tafre synthetic fibers felt like. You can purchase as a set or as individuals. Let's run through the B-roll here. They're not in exact order that they appear in the set. I present these in the order that I applied my makeup. Therefore, we'll start with the JG2. Listen, to have a brush, because you know, to have a brush that mimics gray squirrel but you could actually use with creams and liquids, I know, dreams come true. As you know, squirrel hair is far too delicate to apply cream and liquid products, but to have a similar feel and still use a foundation brush made out of fibers that mimic squirrel hair, oh my goodness. I do enjoy this brush. The fact that it has a round ferrule, and even though it's round, the density is moderate. It's not completely packed, which allows for nice movement here, slightly domed, and I do like the color of the handles. It's a blue silver shimmer finish on the handle with a groove, and the handles are not too long, not too short. They have this hourglass silhouette to them. And here I applied my Suku foundation that, yes, I know it is not sold on Beautylish, but I do have an hourglass demo here on standby. But here is the Suku foundation application, and you see that there's a lot of movement on the brush, and I think it better to apply foundation on the back back of your hand first or on a palette. Use the brush to pick up the product and then apply on your skin, because directly on the foundation, as you see here when applying it on my skin, I think too much product gets absorbed by the bristles, but that is a benefit when you're using synthetic fibers. It's not going to absorb as much product as a natural hair fiber would, because there are cuticles on natural hairs, there are no cuticles on synthetic fibers. Therefore, you might end up having to use less makeup, right? Because the brush will not absorb as much. And I do enjoy the finish here of the foundation. What a joy this brush was to use. Again, it's dense, but it has movement, and I do enjoy applying my foundation in a circular fashion. I feel that is the best approach to properly buff in foundation into the skin. I think it yields the most natural finish, and I'm pleased with this brush. And it retails for $47. Not too bad. That's on par with several foundation brushes that are made with natural hairs, but the advantage you have now with the synthetic is that it will feel softer. Another brush that comes to mind is the Mizuho brush. Mizuho is not sold on Beautylish, but it is a domed brush. It's in the $20 something range, like the 20 to 30 range. This reminds me of that brush, but the JG2 feels luxurious and it's synthetic. Ultra soft and silky, and I think even if you are into natural hairs but you much rather use a synthetic brush for your foundation application, this one's a winner. Now, although there is a concealer brush in this set, I failed to realize that, and you'll see it in the B-roll. I use the eyeshadow brush to apply my concealer, the JG4, a medium shaped shadow brush with nice movement here. It is synthetic, of course, and I do use it to apply my concealer. It's not super dense, which you can probably see is a little floppy on the application. That's not a problem, right? If the concealer was maybe a cream and it wasn't like what I had applied here, it didn't have a lot of movement, maybe not a great pairing with this brush, but it worked out well. I think you would use this eyeshadow brush because, listen, we only have 6 brushes in the collection. I want to use the brushes with as many tasks as possible, and given that it is made with synthetic hair, where you could use it with both powder and liquid products, we're going to use it with as many products as possible. And I do enjoy using an eyeshadow brush to apply my concealer because it gets into the nooks and crannies, underneath the inner eye corner, around the nose, between the brows, without disrupting your brows if you're like me and like to do brows before foundation. But this was for the demo. Usually I do brows after foundation, but I wanted to have nice brows for the B-roll, you know what I mean? Then we go into the JG3, the cheek brush. Oh, this is a fantastic cheek brush. It's round, ferrule, moderately length. You see the dome shape here. It's not flat on both sides. Another shape that I favor in a cheek brush has nice fluidity, and I decided to use this brush to apply some loose powder. And the brush head size, well, okay, I think it's fine. You can use the eyeshadow brush if you wanted, or if you need to dip out and use an entirely different brush that is smaller, maybe more tapered. I thought it was fine for what I needed, some light under eye powdering, and then I took the powder on the rest of the portions of my face, in between the brows, on the low cheek area, and the star of this collection, the JG1, the powder brush. And yes, feast your eyes on this demo as I just lovingly slap on this loose powder all over the face. I know many of you are wondering, Alicia, mimicking squirrel hair, what about that Chikuhodo Z-9? I had to pull out the beloved Z-9 because the JG1 instantly reminded me of the classic Z-9 from the Z series, and you can see the difference between the fact that there is a natural gradient that occurs in natural gray squirrel hair or blue squirrel, and you have just a one color for the synthetic fibers in the JG series. Feels similar, but they're not the same. They're not the same. I think no matter how great the technology is, and it's going to get better 100%, there is just a fluidity and a smoothness, an undisturbed flow that exists in natural squirrel hair that is just not existent in this synthetic fiber that mimics squirrel hair. There is just a little bit of a skip. I don't know if is hard to explain. And you can only know when you compare both brushes at the same time. However, I do think the J-G one is a fine replacement for the Z-9. If you're not into natural hair brushes, but you want to feel what Squirrel can do, what experience it can deliver, you might consider buying either this powder brush or the entire set. Or if you wanted to be more practical, maybe just go for the cheek brush, because you can use the cheek brush to apply your finishing powder, your loose powder, pressed powder, or however you want to go about setting your foundation. You may also use this for mineral makeup, another consideration. Woo! With the foundation brush, I think this is great for mineral makeup because it's not so dense that I feel it will overpack or over apply the powder mineral foundation. It has really nice movement, so it will distribute the product evenly and in a way that won't appear heavy and I think natural and finished when it comes to powder mineral makeup. But man, oh man, listen, I gotta give it to the J-G series. If anyone, like I had said before, if anyone wants to even attempt to mimic squirrel hair, it's Chikuhodo, and I think they did a fine job. Again, it does not surpass the glory that is Z-9 or the entire Z series, but it's close. It's close, and I just wanted to share that comparison in case you were wondering. Going back to the cheek brush, I applied the bronzer from the Hourglass palette that, of course, I would recommend. Why don't I pause here for a minute? The Hourglass palette from this year's holiday release, and unfortunately you are unable to order a custom palette. You will have to just buy it as is from the Beautylish site if you decide to buy one of these palettes. However, the Snake palette curation, the one that you see here, although in the Barn Owl compact, exceptional. The cheek powders, MVPs of this palette. But here I go in with the bronzer, and you can see that's some nice pickup for a synthetic fiber. It flows beautifully into the hollows. I adore this shape because it's not too big, not too small. It has the right amount of splay to distribute the product in a way that leaves behind a diffused finish, but it's not overly diffused. You don't feel like the product is running away from you. And here's another close-up shot of the bronzer pickup. Look at that bronzer pickup. And while I understand it's the Hourglass powder, 100%. It's going to be different than if perhaps you try to pick up a Suku powder or something that's harder pressed and not baked like these powders. Nice to know, however, is going to work well with these types of baked powders. The gelée baked powders, I have to get back to you on with. I will have to further experiment, but you know, to keep it relative and the fact that I've been using the Hourglass palette nonstop ever since I received it, I'll use these brushes with this type of a powder. Easy to apply, and you see just the seamless nature of this bronzer application using the cheek brush. And then we move into the powder blushes. I apply both of them. Splendid, absolutely wonderful with this application. Easy to detect where the blush is going, how it's applied. You can feel where the product is just based on how the brush feels on the cheeks. And then I went in with the shimmery type of topper powder in the Hourglass palette, and I was pleased to discover, despite the fact that the brush wasn't too floppy and wasn't too dense, I felt it buffed that texture nicely into the skin where it didn't appear overly shimmery or metallic on the apples of my cheeks. And then I wanted to put in some eyebrow pencil on this blemish because it was bothering me. Why not? Let's make it into a beauty mark. Since this is the only cheek brush in the set, I decided to apply highlighter with it, and it works. Listen, you apply highlighter just where you need it, right at the edge, and it applies that highlighter beautifully onto the cheekbones, not overwhelmingly, just where I need it. And here is a close-up once everything has been applied. Listen, man, this ain't bad. This ain't bad for some synthetic brushes. It looks like I use my natural hair brushes. 100%. And you're like, of course, Alicia, well, what's the difference? You know, when using natural hair brushes, the fiber is left intact and it's bundled, and the way it's bundled determines the density, the function, and the overall feel of the brush. With synthetic fibers, usually they are laser cut to shape the brush, and laser cut fibers feel a little rougher on the skin, and they also have a tendency to pick up makeup when layering blush or whatever cheek product you decide to on foundation. The blush, the bronzer, and the highlighter applied undisturbingly. It did not move my foundation. In fact, everything looked airbrush smooth. I was delightfully surprised and impressed by this set, and happy that I went with the J-G series, because that's what spoke to me the most. I wanted to discover mimicking squirrel hair. You've got to be kidding me. No, they were correct, and I adore the finished product. But what about the eyeshadow brushes? Well, I decided to go in with Viseart's Dark Matte palette, which another brand I would also recommend in this sale. You gotta listen, the edits and the Entendu palettes from Viseart, exceptional. The fact that you have 12 shadows at your disposal, and it could be all matte or it could be a mixture depending if it's an edit palette or an all matte or all the shimmers palette, doesn't take up much room in your makeup bag. And the formula, solid. You'll see here when using the JG4, isn't that nice pickup with the matte? My goodness. Going in on the outer part of my lid and pulling the color through the crease, I was pleasantly surprised to find out the brush had nice movement across the skin. It did not move it. It applied the product evenly, and I decided to apply the olive shade on my other eye and discovered the same outcome. The brush felt soft on my skin. It did not feel rough. And again, you saw how exceptional the product pickup was, that when laid on the outer part of my lid, it was even and it wasn't spotty. Now the JG5, the pencil brush in this collection, is a little stiff. It's hard to detect the same softness from this brush that you can from the JG4. Nevertheless, I still decided to use this brush to apply some shadow on the outer lower corner, and soon discovered, whoa, that applied quite a lot. Did the same thing with the olive shade, and okay. The JG7, I failed to read up on the product details for this brush, assumed it was for eyeshadow because of its small size. It is the set's concealer brush. I have B-roll applying concealer with this brush, but I thought, why not? Let's try it with eyeshadow. So I decided to pick up the darker shadow from the same Dark Matte palette and took advantage of the flat top of this tiny concealer brush to apply shadow on the outer lid in a uniform fashion, an even fashion, because I thought if it's a flat top, it's just gonna lay the color there like stamping it on, which is what I did. And then I went on to apply the forest green color. My goodness. And I could attribute this to the glorious formula of Viseart matte, but man, even with the small flathead brush, I was successfully able to blend this green matte on the outer part of my lid, went back with the JG4 to blend out the edges through the crease for a softer look. I went in with the JG7 to apply a little bit of shadow on the lower lash line here. Why not? Not too bad, I thought, but decided, okay, let's see what this brush is designed to blend, and popped on a tiny bit of concealer on the lower inner part of my under eye. And I'm sure you're thinking, this brush will take forever to blend out my concealer. If I'm one of those that slaps on a boatload, you'll be there all day. I think where this brush shines in its role is to tackle those small portions of your face for the detailing work, right? If you don't even wear a lot of concealer, but you do so right on the lower inner part of your under eyes, then most certainly the JG7 is going to be that brush to lightly blend out the concealer, and also perhaps to clean up around the brow bone area, as you see here, to clean up any over blending for the shadow. You can definitely find a role for this brush. It is tiny, and although it is labeled to be a concealer brush, I consider this to be like a little eraser. Okay, you can't go wrong with this brush head size in correcting tiny mistakes that if the brush is too big, you'll overcorrect, right? So take advantage of the small size, get into the nitty gritty when correcting your eyeshadow blending. And the next pick we have is also from Viseart, the Coyish Entendu. Oh, that was on the list 100% for my product request because I had my eye on this palette for a tremendously long time. I have the original Koi and I could not wait to try Coyish. This is in the Entendu format, which is a little bigger than the edit format, which is fine, right? We'll take it. It's still 12 shadows with bigger pans, and because of the JG4's medium density, I think it appropriate pairing with the Viseart shadow because they tend to run softer in the pan. So I thought it was easier to pick up with this type of a brush. And you can see here picking up one of the red shimmery shades, and I plopped that on the neutral eye. And I went in with my finger because I just needed a little more coverage on the center of my lid, but I did like how overall the shadow applied. Right? I thought it swept nicely through the crease and the initial lay down was acceptable. We went in with the pencil brush next, and again, the pencil brush doesn't have as much movement because it's dense at the base and the taper starts very low, so there's not much movement. It's more like a stamping, I think, type of a tool. Nevertheless, though, I picked up the yellow duochrome, placed that on the inner part of my eye, ran it through the inner arc of the eye, went in with another shimmer, same pencil brush, and placed that on the lower inner part of the eye. Went back with the JG4 to pick up this emerald metallic, and ooh, you can see the lay down with this color because of how rich it is. I do appreciate how the JG4 applied this in a soft manner. It wasn't tight on the lid, but again, it's truly due to Viseart's impeccable formula. And what I like about this type of a brush is that you can use the flat side to apply the color on the lid and then use the tip to run it through the crease to further blend the edges. Went in with the pencil brush to apply the lime shade on the inner corner as well as the inner arc, and also picked up the mint shade to apply on the lower inner lash line, stamping color there. And forgive me for not demoing the JG6. It is designed to be an eyebrow brush, but I rarely use these types of tools to apply brow product through my brows, and it is a little stiff for liner. If you're like, well, we could use for liner, you could, but more in a stamped fashion. I wouldn't run this across the lid. I think it's far too stiff, but it's a great stiffness for the brows, for sure, especially if you're one to use pomade. Great with the pomade, because look at that. Look how uniform the bristles are. They don't splay, they don't separate, and if you use pomade to draw on those brows, and the application will be beautifully precise. The lip brush, however, the JG8 is nice, flat on the top, long bristles, and the fibers stay pretty uniform, and you'll see when I use my Natasha Denona, another product request here, the lip liner in Cleo. I do like this color. It's a pretty color. I have it here now with Natasha from her I Dream or My Dream collection that came out last year. It's like a mauve type of a brown. You see, you know, I love my pinky mauve browns. Initially, I applied it first just to line my lip, but I decided to fill my entire lip and then proceeded to go in with the lip brush to spread the color evenly. And here's a close-up of how the lip liner appears on its own. A little bit of a 3/4 shot, and I decided to go in first with Michelle. Thought Michelle was a little too light, and then I proceeded with the Natasha shade from the My Dream collection. And here is the final look using the entire J-G Chikuhodo synthetic brush series, as well as Viseart's Entendu Coyish, the Natasha Denona lip liner, which not my first time using one of her lip liners. I do enjoy them. I highly recommend them in that they are incredibly smooth and silky on the application. You can use these to fill the entire lip if you prefer the lip color or you rely on that technique for reinforcement and then go in with your favorite lipstick or lip gloss. And here is a close-up of the eyes. The Coyish Entendu, it's pretty. Now there are duochromes in here, but they are a lot softer than what you would find in like what we'll see in Danessa's Lightwork 5 and many indie brands, even Natasha Denona or Pat McGrath, right? These are not going to give that same wham, bam, shine, that same intense effect. I do enjoy the texture of Viseart shimmers and metallics. I do appreciate that they're not over the top thick or heavy on the lids, that they are softer. I think that allows for more lid types and textures to partake in colorful shadows that appear softer on the lid and are easy to apply and are easy to blend. And that's the benefit I recognize when using Viseart shadows. And speaking of shadows, the other shadow pick, before we get into Danessa, I know all timestamps will be down below. Before I started filming this video, it has been revealed that Natasha Denona's Xenon midi is slated to drop on October 23rd, and I thought it only appropriate for me to get acquainted with the Xenon mini. I requested this little palette because it has been on my radar for years. When it initially released a few years back, I didn't jump the gun because I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm going to use that as often, but when I learned about Xenon midi's release before, when it had the leak, I was like, ooh, maybe I should get the mini so I could learn about the concept. I could familiarize myself with these black, silver, and gray shadows. So here I reapplied my Lancome concealer, and you can see a Sonia G soft concealer brush in action. Listen, when it comes to the Fusion set for both face and eyes from Sonia G, and yes, I just showed you JG2. We love her. Jumbo base. Jumbo base is exceptional as well. It's hard to pick, but maybe an easy pick for you because the jumbo base does have natural hair in there. If you want to go all exclusive synthetic, JG2. Mini Xenon. I'm not entirely sure what the general reception was for this palette. I was thoroughly impressed. So I went in with Sonia G's mini booster to apply like this blue gray matte, and this color reminds me of the matte from Pat McGrath's Dark Star. Is it Dark Star? Dark Matter. The first 6-pan palette for her holiday release in 2018. Ooh, you can't go wrong with the blue gray. Blue gray is just so lovely all on its own if you wanted to dust it all over your lid and crease, but I proceeded to apply the light blue matte on the lid just as a contrast with the Lotus Worker. Pulled a little bit here with the Pencil Pro and finished it off with Sonia's Blender Pro. Then I decided to use a pencil set from Sonia's Fundamental series with a black shadow. Now, this technique might not be a comfortable one to use for all, but I like to sketch out the wing shape first with black shadow. So here I primarily stayed on the outer part of my lid, took it through the crease, then on the lower lash line. Proceeded to then apply the beige matte in case you wanted to soften the overall look of the matte shade. You can use the beige matte to just lessen the color and lessen the intensity of the black shadow. But I decided to go in with the mini booster, picked up some more black matte, and because I already had the shape sketched out from the pencil brush, it was easier for me to blend the shadow since I had that draft there on the outer lid to darken up the crease and the outer lid. Went in with my Chikuhodo Takumi T7 shadow brush. T7? No, I'm a liar. It is the T12. This is a nifty little brush. In fact, the entire Chikuhodo Takumi series, nifty top to bottom. Picked up this beautiful sterling silver metallic. Whoa, 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 how this shine. And why the Xenon mini was on my radar, because I knew this metallic would blow me out of the water. So I decided to apply it primarily on the lid for the black matte eye. Applied it on the inner corner for the blue-gray eye, but I decided to just lightly tap it on top of the light blue gray matte because you don't necessarily have to apply the metallic in a opaque fashion like I did on the black matte eye. You can still control the finish of a metallic shade by its application or by your application, whether you use a brush that's softer or not as dense, or use your fingertip, right, to just lightly tap that texture so you can still have that twinkle effect but it not be intense as if you were to apply it with a more dense pickup shadow brush. And here is the final look using mini Xenon. Wow, listen, it's been a while since I went full glam. If I wanted full glam fast, red carpet, event ready, smoky eye, mini Xenon is it. And the fact that it is tiny but has so much impact, and the way you can vary the degree of intensity with the different mattes in there, if you wanted to go softer with the blue gray matte, or even you could use a softer brush applying the black matte and it not appear as intense and smoke heavy on the outer corner, you can definitely whisk it out in a way that gives you that beautiful shadow look. Or you can line the top and bottom of your waterline and then use the black Xenon matte to reinforce that liner for like that ultra smoky eye. My goodness, beautifully versatile. Can't go wrong with the mini Xenon, and I am happy to have requested it. Now I have that initial perspective from Natasha when creating Xenon, and to see it expanded in the midi now arriving on the 23rd, too much to handle. And I'm sure you're now wondering, Alicia, show us the Danessa palette. I am planning to film a dedicated video using Lightwork 5. I don't think it's fair for me to expand on it in the Beautylish video, but I do have it here on my eyes, and I do not have the B-roll in front of me because I filmed it before I filmed this main part, so I'm going based off memory. But let's go through the swatches, right? And I'll hop on the product page, as there are several different textures found in this palette, and it is expensive. It's $125, all new shades, all new finishes, although some might feel similar to what you've encountered in Lightwork 4 and 3. Yes, not quite. It says the limited edition palette combines 18 eye and face pigments in 7 dynamic color shifting finishes, heavily halos, fusion flakes, silk press shifters, whipped powder shifters, molten metallic suede shimmers, and cushion chromes. And it is limited edition. That's what got me. I tuned into Danessa's Teach Me Tuesdays where she featured Lightwork 5. Oh man, I couldn't. I was like, limited is limited. That means I might not be able to get it in the future. I gotta get it through the Beautylish event. I would suggest you check out that Teach Me Tuesday video as Danessa and the team go in full depth of this palette, and it is a manifestation palette. It is the I Am Lightwork 5, where you have I Am here, the top, the bottom of the mirror, and these different characteristics, these different emotions that you can recite. You can say, I am centered, I am radiant, I am fierce. And Danessa wanted to create this palette in encouraging us to take that moment for ourselves, to reinforce or quell any doubt that we have about our accomplishments, what we're about to do that day, how we're feeling at the moment. And I could get down with that 100%. I think it's fantastic where Danessa wanted to fuse the self-care element, and I've spoken about self-care in other videos, that her understanding of self-care is taking that moment for yourself to help you remember that you are also important, that you are great, that you are everything that you need to tell yourself in order to accomplish what you think you can accomplish, but you can, because I am. And now to have it with the makeup element, especially if one relies on makeup to invoke those emotions, to invoke that empowerment, that confidence. What a fantastic platform and a source, right? To have beauty deliver that feeling of, yes, I am. And to have, my goodness, 7 different finishes, which I was excited to learn because, hold on, if we go back to Lightwork 4, this was the texture that I felt didn't do well because, first of all, these pans are huge, and it was the flaky type of a texture that when you applied it, the lay down was a little bit uneven, right? It was very tight on the lid, but now we have the flake hybrid that's a lot more creamy and easier to pick up and beautifully shiny. That was Lightwork 4. Lightwork 3, my goodness, this really hit it out of the park. The middle row here were your transform shades, as they have a translucent base, but they had that pink, blue, green, or whatever flip, meaning you could apply this on the cheekbones or wherever you wanted to change the shift of the eye color. And you had the multi-chromes here, but I enjoyed that she had this cream to matte type of black base that you could apply all over the lid, and then apply any of the multi-chromes on top to further intensify its effect on the eyes. Lightwork 3 for me, I thought was a hit. Lightwork 4, a little hit or miss because I thought it was tougher to use, although the winners for me were the multichromes. The multichromes were fantastic, and you have these are water activated textures, so another barrier of entry, right? You gotta wet the brush, then you gotta paint it on. So Lightwork 4 for me wasn't as easy to use, but Lightwork 5 I think a lot more user friendly. You have so many shades in here because now you have the duos on the center with the multichromes, with the metallics, with the hybrid, shifty, flaky, whatever. There's a lot going on. And as I was running my mouth, hopefully you saw the demo here on the B-roll. I tried to apply as many different shades and textures as I could, and I think you can tell that these textures are pretty easy to apply all on their own. Despite the fact that they are multichrome and metallic and high shine, you can buff the texture successfully through the crease in a way that it still appears soft and blurred and not necessarily have to use a matte. I actually would recommend that you stay far away from the mattes. Commit to these textures like I did with Izamea's palette, Industrial 2.0. Perhaps many of you are comparing 2.0 to this. That'll be in a separate video. I would like to make that comparison, but for me, I think Lightwork 5 out of the 3, probably the most user-friendly. 100%. Primarily all formulas that are smooth, easy to pick up with finger or brush. They don't need any water activating. They don't need any smoothing out or warming up. It's just palette to eye, seamless in that regard. And just, I mean, look at this. This is crazy. And many thought to buy this instead of Pat's Face palette, which I completely understand. This is more of a party. More of a party. I tried to... Hello? Can you clean your fingers, please? I tried to apply one of the... Let's see, Radiant. Let me pull up Radiant and get the correct formula for this shade. Radiant is a rosy apricot to chartreuse yellow duochrome with the metallic finish. I had tried to apply Radiant here on the cheekbones you probably saw on the B-roll. It looks nice on camera, but in person, I would recommend that you wet it after application because you could see the particles a little bit. Where I feel the original Lightwork 3, these textures are, I was gonna say smoother. They do lay down smoother. They don't have that same texture as Radiant, and I think it may be a little easier to tap on the cheekbones, but again, I would recommend that you wet your cheekbones first or after you apply any of these metallic shades from Lightwork 5, you spritz and perhaps then use a sponge afterwards to smooth out the edges of that application. But those were my picks for the Beautylish Fall Gift Card event, and as I was presenting the brushes, I wanted to also bring in other products that I recommend. And although I'm no longer using skincare, I still had my Allies of Skin Peptide Moisturizer that I primarily use for prep. I no longer apply it morning and night as I used to, but I do apply skincare as prep before I apply my foundation. I think that is an important step to take. And of course, my Bioderma. This is instrumental in my eyeshadow videos where I rely on Bioderma to remove my shadow in between takes. It is formulated to be for sensitive skin. It is fragrance free, and my go-tos for removing eye makeup, especially for multi-look eye videos. And I know many of you have your eye on the Sonia G Fundamental Eye Set, but her Fundamental Face Set is just magnificent. She covers all the bases for all types of different face products, cheek products, textures, whatever issues you encountered. She lays them out. And if you want to know, go over to her blog, sweetmakeup-temptations.com, as she covers each brush to the finest detail and provides several examples for makeup where this brush is good for that type of texture, but there are no holes uncovered, okay? Sonia covers all the bases. And this recommendation list is limited again because I'm no longer using skincare, primarily focusing now on the brushes and on the makeup, which makes it easier for me. Please, I don't have to worry about replenishing skincare or buying anything that I'm not going to use. So I'm happy to have edited my picks and highlight the ones that were of highest interest to me, and hopefully provided you with some insight. If you also had these products on your radar, if you had your eye on the Chikuhodo brushes, hopefully the B-roll kind of helped decide which brush can be right for you. And if you also had Lightwork 5 Mini Xenon, I'm sure now you got Xenon Mini on the radar, Viseart's Entendu in Coyish, Natasha Denona's lip liner. Hopefully these demonstrations will help you arrive at a conclusion that whether you want to participate in the fall gift card event or not, perhaps you just wanted to hang out with me. And I appreciate that as well. Thank you again, Beautylish, for the opportunity and for sending me these products. I'll see you down in those comments, fam. But until then, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up or maybe consider subscribing to my channel. And until then, I will see you on here again with another review tutorial, brush extravaganza, or video covering Danessa's Lightwork 5 in full detail. Take care, and I will see you again soon.